Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my April marked as to read video. So for those of you who don't know, my marked as to read videos is a series of videos where I go through the books that I have recently been marking as to read on Goodreads, where I heard about them, why I'm excited to read them. Don't think that this is like a TBR type video. They are all books that I want to read and I plan to read eventually, but it could be literal years before I get to most of these. So it's not a TBR or anything like that, but it is books that I've heard about recently that I'm excited about and I marked as to read, and we're going to talk about all of them. So let's jump straight in. I marked a total of 15 books as to read in April. So the first book I want to talk to you guys about is one that I heard about on a Goodreads blog. Now, there's a lot of Goodreads blog posts. If you guys don't look at the Goodreads blog posts, you should, because I get so many book recommendations from the Goodreads blog posts. This blog post was a one about just the big book releases that were coming for spring. And there was this really interesting book on there. I'm actually going to read you the synopsis from my laptop because I tried to like put this into into my own words and I could not do it. So the book is Women Talking by Miriam Towles. And so the synopsis says, one evening, 8 Mennonite women climbed into a hayloft to conduct a secret meeting. For the past 2 years, each of these women and more than 100 other girls in their colony have been repeatedly violated in the night by demons coming to punish them for their sins. Now that the women have learned they were in fact drugged and attacked by a group of men from their own community, they are determined to protect themselves and their daughters from future harm. While the men of the colony are off in the city attempting to raise enough money to bail out the rapists and bring them home, these women, all illiterate without any knowledge of the world outside their community and unable even to speak the language of the country they live in, have very little time to make a choice. Should they stay in the only world they've ever known, or should they dare to escape? Based on real events and through the minutes of the women's all-female symposium, Towles' masterful novel uses wry, politically engaged humour to relate this tale of women claiming their own power to decide. So, whoa, that book sounds so impactful, and so I think it's going to be told in a really interesting way too, with it seeming to be told in like minutes of these women's meetings. But I think it's just going to be very powerful and a very interesting commentary on a lot of what's going on in the world today. And I've never heard anyone talk about this, but I was very, very intrigued by that synopsis. Next, we have another Goodreads blog post. This was just one of their typical posts that they do about books hitting shelves in the next however many days. So I have If Then by Kate Hope Day. This one, again, has a really intriguing plot that it just sounds really interesting. It's about 4 people, like 4 neighbors, who all start to see themselves in parallel realities. And they see things that make them question their own lives and what's going on, and they start to question, I think, what's real, what's reality. I'm always intrigued by parallel realities and parallel universes and timelines and alternate realities and all of that stuff. I find all of that very intriguing, and so the synopsis of that book I found pretty intriguing. And the other one from that same blog post was The Trial of Lizzie Borden by Cara Robertson. This one is actually a non-fiction story of the Lizzie Borden murder trial. Like, it's of the trial, which I think is just going to be so fascinating. Lizzie Borden is a case that I've heard about, but I've never really read anything about or looked too in-depth into. And I actually, like, this is how little I knew about it. Until reading the synopsis of this book, I had thought that this was a case that happened in the UK, and it's not. It's actually an American case, I think, that happened in Massachusetts, which, again, I never even realized. So I'm very intrigued about a non-fiction story dealing with that murder trial. Then we have another Goodreads blog post. This one was about the top books so far this year, so all of the like highest rated books that people were reading so far in 2019. And from that, I saw a book called The Forgotten Hours by Karen Schumann. So this one has some themes, again, that I find incredibly interesting in books. It's about a girl who, I think when they were in their late teens, she was on like holiday with her best friend. Like, her best friend came away on like holidays with her family, and her best friend ended up accusing her father of sexual assault. And I think it's like 10 years later, and her father actually ended up going to prison. However, the main character has always maintained the father's innocence, and it's 10 years later, and the father is getting out of prison, and it's about her questioning what happened 10 years ago and maybe rethinking what she always thought. I always find stories like that incredibly intriguing, so I was very interested in that. Next, we have a whole slew of books. There was a Goodreads blog post about the anticipated spring releases for mystery thriller books. You guys know, if you watch my channel, mystery thrillers is my favorite genre. Anytime I hear a mystery thriller synopsis, I pretty much get excited about it. So the first of those we have is called The Better Sister by Alifair Burke. So this one is about two sisters who have led kind of different lives, and one of them, you know, marries this quite prominent man, and then it's like 15 years later and now the other sister is married to that man. Not sure what's gone on there, and now that man has been murdered. And I assume this is going to do all of that. This, it just sounds like it's going to have such incredible like commentary on relationships, particularly relationships between sisters. I just think it's going to be very, very intriguing. Next is Stone Mothers by Erin Kelly. This one is about a woman who, when she was 17, she fled her hometown after burying a body with her boyfriend, and it's 30 years later and she's having to return to that hometown because I think her mother's sick with cancer, and she returns to the hometown, and it's about all of those secrets trying to come up again. You guys know I've talked about, it's one of my favorite thriller tropes for a person to be returning to their hometown to try figure out a like mystery from the past. I love that shit. Next we have Little Darlings by Melanie Golding. This one sounds really creepy. It's about a woman who has recently given birth to twins, and while she's in the hospital, she's convinced that she saw someone trying to take her twins and replace them with creatures. Creatures? Like what? The word creatures in relation to babies just really freaks me out. And however, no one will believe her. It's then like a month later and she's in the park with her babies when she looks away or whatever, and the twins are replaced. Well, she is convinced that they're replaced. Everyone else thinks that the twins are exactly what they were before. They can't tell any difference, but she's convinced that her twins have been replaced by something. I don't know. That just sounds so freaking creepy. It just creeps me the heck out. The next one from that blog post was The Night Before by Wendy Walker. I'm pretty sure I have another book by Wendy Walker also on my to-read list. So this one is about two sisters. Again, I love sister relationships in books. One of them is like leading the more traditional life, that she settled down, got married, all of that type of thing. There's the other sister who has been very unlucky in love. She's gone through a recent breakup and she leaves where she was living and travels to where her sister is now living. And she decides to give it one last go and go on this blind date with someone that she's like met online. However, I think it's then been a couple of days and like she hasn't come home, and it's all about that. The thing that intrigued me most about this though was the last line of the synopsis, which says something along the lines of, this is the sister who is married and isn't on the date. It says she is not worried about what this man might have done to Laura. She's worried about what Laura might have done to him. I'm sorry, is Laura a serial killer? Very intrigued. And the last one that I got from that particular blog post was The Confessions of Franny Langton by Sarah Collins. This one is a historical mystery. I think it's set in 1826. And it's about a maid who is currently on trial for murdering the couple that like she was the housekeeper for, or the maid for. And it's all about that trial, and she's been vilified by the public. And it's all about trying to unravel the story and find out whether she murdered them or not. Into that. I really enjoy historical mystery, so was very into that. Next we have My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I'm sure you guys have all heard about this one. This one has been all over BookTube. It was recently shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, so it's been everywhere lately. So this one is about a woman who is every time I think her sister gets involved in a relationship, the man ends up murdered, and she helps her sister cover up the murders. And then I think she has a crush on this guy, and her sister ends up getting involved with him. And I think she fears that her sister is once again going to murder this man, but it's a bit different this time because it's someone she actually cares about. I don't really know. Again, sister relationships, possible serial killers, all very, very intriguing. Next, we have a book that I heard Emma from over at Drinking by My Shelf talking about. She did this really interesting video where she talked about novels that are pretending not to be novels. So they're like told in a way that like they're purporting to be something else other than a novel, which the whole concept of that I found really fascinating. And one of the books that she talked about was You Don't Know Me by Imran Mahmood. This is a mystery novel, and it's about a man who's on trial for murder. And I think right as they're going into closing arguments, he fires his solicitor and takes up his own defense and is giving his own closing argument. And I think the way the story is told is that you are the jury and you're hearing this closing argument of him breaking down each piece of evidence or whatever and saying why he couldn't possibly have done it, but you were being told it as if you're the member of the jury, I believe is what's going on. It just sounded incredibly interesting, like an incredibly interesting way of telling a story, and there's obviously a mystery aspect to it, which you guys know I love a mystery. Next we have another Goodreads blog post. This one is about the most read books right now. So this was just all about books that the most, like a lot of people had marked as currently reading at that time that this article blog post was published. And so the book is The Library Book by Susan Orlean, and I found that really interesting because it's not one that I'd heard anyone talk about. It's a non-fiction book about the 1986 fire at the LA Public Library, in which I think it was like 400,000 books were destroyed and another 700,000 books were damaged. And I think it's all like delving into the fire and what happened and all of that, but also just looking at libraries in general and the importance of libraries. I just thought it sounded very, very interesting, and I hadn't heard anyone talk about it, and it just sounded really interesting. Next I have a graphic novel that I actually heard about over from Lauren at Lauren in the Books, which is Moonstruck, Volume 1 by Grace Ellis and a slew of other people. I don't really know too many details, except I think it's like a fun, rompy YA graphic novel. It's LGBT. I think it's about a girl who's a werewolf. It just looks like a lot of fun, and I just was kind of intrigued about it, and so I marked that one as to read. Next, we have one that there's a bit of a story behind. So my friend Emma, hi Emma, my real life friend Emma, sent me a quiz that she had done that was like one of those online quizzes that was like, find out who is your destined book boyfriend, the book boyfriend who you're destined to be with. And so obviously I did the quiz, and it was like YA book boyfriends, and I got Jamie Watson from the A Study in Charlotte series by Brittany Cavallaro. I haven't read those books. I've kind of heard about them. They were kind of on my radar, and I was like, well, obviously if Jamie Watson and I are destined to be together, presumably now that he's an adult, because I'm 30 and ain't dating no 16-year-olds, and I obviously have to read the books. And I have always been kind of intrigued about it because I know it's a Sherlock like Watson like kind of retelling their descendants. Jamie Watson is a descendant of Dr. Watson, and it's Charlotte Holmes who is a descendant of Sherlock Holmes, and I'm sure they're solving mysteries, and it just sounds fun, YA mystery series with potentially my future husband. So always intrigued. Next we have another Goodreads blog post. This was the 40 most popular translated books. So this is the last one that I marked as to read in the month. It's called The Hangman's Daughter by Oliver Poche. I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering that. This one I'd never heard of. So a lot of the books on that list of popular translated books are books that I'd heard of in the past, but I'd never heard of this one. And it's about a girl who is the daughter of a hangman. I think it's like historical. I can't remember I didn't write down what year it was set because I'm an idiot. And she is like destined to be married to the son of this other hangman. However, the physician's son in the town is in love with her. And there's recently been a murder. A boy's body was found in the river with the symbol of a witch burnt into him. And there hasn't been any like witch crimes in their village or whatever in a long time. And the main suspect for the murder is the local midwife, and her father is designated to be the person who's like got to question her and like get a confession out of her. And I think it's about her and the main love interest trying to solve this murder because they don't believe that the midwife did it. I was just intrigued on a couple of different levels that I hadn't heard of it, but it's apparently quite popular. She's a hangman's daughter. It's historical. There's a murder mystery, potentially a forbidden love, all elements that I very much enjoy. And so I was very intrigued by that book and marked it as to read. So that's it, you guys. Those are the 15 books that I marked as to read in the month of April. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you have read any of these books, if you've got any thoughts, or you probably haven't read too many of them because I think a lot of these are future releases because they were on Goodreads blog posts. I'm sorry if you've been able to hear that weird crackling that my laptop is making this whole time. I really need a new laptop. So yeah, I would love to chat in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.